And we're being recorded. Many of these career programs can be completed in 1 year. If you'd like more information about our CTE programs, you can find us on the college website, moorparkcollege.edu/CTE. The Job Ready Alumni Forum was created by the Moorpark College Foundation for our current students, or potential students looking at some of our CTE programs, and for the community at large. It's a chance for us to showcase some of our alumni who've been successful out in the marketplace. They'll share stories both about their time at Moorpark College and their time in the industry. We're hoping that they can tell us and tell our students how they've transitioned from being a student at Moorpark College to a successful professional in the industry. We'll also be hearing from an industry partner that may be part of one of our advisory boards, or a local industry person who helps usher our students into internships or employment once they finish their time at Moorpark College. Finally, to bring it all together, we'll have someone from our program working with us as the host. Tonight, obviously, we're talking about the nursing program, and our host tonight is Christina Lee. Thank you, Christina, for being here, and thank you for bringing this wonderful panel together. Christina is the nursing coordinator and the program director for the Moorpark College Associate Degree in Nursing Program. She's been with Moorpark College since 2003, after having been a registered nurse at a local hospital. Christina initially facilitated the college's Nursing Skills Lab, and then became a full-time faculty member in 2010. Christina holds a Master of Science degree in nursing with an emphasis in nursing education from Mount St. Mary University and a Bachelor of Science in nursing from Sonoma State University. Thank you so much, Christina, for being here. And again, thank you to our panelists. Christina, why don't you do the honors and introduce our panel?
Certainly. Thank you, John, for the introduction. And I'm very happy to introduce two alumni and one of our industry partners with the nursing program. First up, we have our alumnus, Gabriel Guillen. Gabriel received his associate degree in nursing from Moorpark College in 2009 and graduated from CSU Channel Islands in 2011 with a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing. Most recently, Gabriel has been working in palliative care for St. John's Hospitals in Oxnard and Camarillo, addressing the COVID-19 pandemic and other life-limiting illnesses. Gabriel has a strong focus on healthcare advocacy and justice for the poor and underserved populations, especially by investing in people's preventative health today in order to positively impact future generations through disease prevention, diseases which have the ability to impact a human's life forever. Welcome, Gabriel.
Hello, everyone.
All right. Next up, we have our alumna, Alicia Taylor. Alicia graduated from the Moorpark College Associate Degree Nursing Program in 2004 and has had many phenomenal experiences in her nursing career. She worked her way through varied clinical experiences at many local hospitals in Ventura County. Most of Alicia's clinical years have been in the intensive care unit and the emergency room. However, she has enjoyed learning opportunities in other nursing areas as well. Alicia is currently working on a book called The Making of an American Nurse and hopes to start a family nurse practitioner degree in the near future. Thank you, Alicia, for joining us.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
And our industry partner is Kathy Triguero. Kathy currently works as the Director of Nursing Education at Los Robles Healthcare System. Kathy has worked in Ventura County for 40 years. Her career has varied from telemetry bedside nursing, nursing management, case management to employee health. She received her associate degree in nursing in 1980 at Ventura College, her Bachelor's of Science in Nursing in 1995 through CSU Dominguez Hills, and then Master's in Organizational Leadership in 2015. Over the last 10 years, Kathy has been working in the education department to assist with the college clinical rotations, foster new graduates, and encourage staff to further their learning with clinical knowledge and advanced degrees. Kathy, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Glad to be here.
John, you're on mute.
Thank you very much. Christina, we've got some prepared questions. Why don't we start the discussion?
Sure.
Thank you again.
Yeah, I'd be happy to start with them. Let's start with Gabe and Alicia. Can you share with us how you came to Moorpark College and how you found your way into nursing? Alicia, would you like to start?
Sure. Back in 1998, I had graduated with a degree in nutritional science and found myself unable to pay my bills and waiting tables. I had always been a natural caregiver, and I came to the conclusion that I really thought about nursing after I had kind of a life-changing experience. I was waiting tables, and one of my clients, he actually had a cardiac arrest, and I got to experience 100 people in a busy Friday night restaurant not able to act. And I was one of two, it was myself and my friend. We were the only ones that were able to make a move and do something. We tried our best, and I think it was that turning point that I really felt like I wanted to pursue nursing. And I told my husband we were going to do it, and like it or not. And we, I did the prerequisites, which were very manageable at that time, and applied for the program and waited for my number to come, and then was called and began the program.
Great, and we're glad to have you. Gabriel, how about you?
Well, actually, my background is also very similar to Alicia. Mine has nothing to do with nursing. Previously, I used to work for warehouse or paper products. There's still actually one company in Camarillo, but they were sold to International Paper. We used to produce what people call cardboard boxes. And eventually, I saw that the business was coming down little by little. We were losing market to China and India and internationally. And the prices were going down and down, and the work was actually getting less and less. So I figured it was time for me to start going back to school. Originally, back in '93, when I finished my first college degree, I was planning on taking a 1-year break, what actually ended up turning into 10 years when I finally went back to college. So here I was actually one of the older students trying to finish a college degree, especially now in nursing. And luckily for me, I went into nursing because St. John's used to have a program called Health Scholars or Clinical Care Extenders. And through my experience there, I was able to see that the nurses are able to spend more time with the patients than the doctors do. Yes, they don't have that fancy salary, or they don't drive the Ferraris, but you know what? They provide that invaluable care at the bedside. So for me, that was how I got into Moorpark College.
Great. Thanks, Gabe. Glad to have you too. Now that you're nurses, you came through the program, you're nurses now. What would you tell students that are just coming into the program about how to maximize their experience?
I'll go ahead and speak. One of the things that I would say is to get prepared. And if there's any way that there's scholarships, if there's a way to organize your finances so you don't have to work 36 hours or 40 hours a week, and to get the people that are able to support you emotionally with your children, whatever it takes to help support your success. Because nursing school, it takes a village, and then once you get it, you're so rewarded for sure. But to get organized and to get your support system in place is what I would tell the students to do.
I think it was significant too when you said you told your husband we're going to nursing school.
Yeah, he says he was single for 2 years, but it was really for a lifetime goal, really.
Yep, great, thank you. Gabriel, how about you?
I do actually second what Alicia mentioned. In addition, actually, I was lucky enough that my wife was able to support me on those 16 months of nursing program, because I did the accelerated program of Partners in Care at Moorpark College. But I also took a couple of loans because I didn't want to be working. I was coming back into nursing. I wasn't as young as most of our nursing students are. And my brain plasticity wasn't as flexible as it used to be back when I was younger. So imagine me coming actually in my 30s into nursing program. So for me, I wanted to be able to dedicate my time completely 100% to nursing. And I was lucky enough that I was actually had the support of my family. One of the things to keep in mind, nursing sometimes puts people on very stressful situations. It sometimes also causes that, when you don't have a good marriage, that marriage might sometimes even end up being the tipping point, because sometimes it actually empowers those people that want to pursue their passions to pursue their passions and not be dependent on another person. So yes, sometimes we do see I haven't done the study about how many people actually divorce after the nursing program. But the main thing is you want to get your support system, like Alicia mentioned. The second thing, you want to be also kind and lenient to yourself. because you have to realize that in nursing program, you're gonna overview so many diseases, and many of the times you're gonna think you have each one of them, and you're gonna learn all the physiological, pathological, and everything for each of the nursing interventions for each of the diseases, and you're gonna think, oh, I have this, oh, I think my mom has that. You know what, just be leaning to yourself and be willing to learn something new. And surround yourself with people that you wanna study, that they have good learning habits, similar like yours, to be able to be successful. Because otherwise, if you like to procrastinate, eventually people are not gonna be able to carry your weight. And you also don't wanna be that person that, you know, because you don't do your work, you don't end up passing NCLEX, and everybody fears the NCLEX.
And NCLEX is the nursing licensure exam. So you graduate with a degree, you're not a nurse yet, you pass the licensure exam in your state and the state approves you, and then you're a registered nurse.
You know, I just to add on for what Gabriel was saying, when I first went to nursing school, I thought that probably everybody had the same purpose and the same passion about nursing that I do. As we sat in the room, because we had like team building experiences, and you learn that not everybody is where you are. Some people are split and are single moms. Some people, they need the income. So there are a lot of reasons why, and they don't all match yours. But that's the gift about nursing, is there is 1,000 ways to be a nurse. So, you know, it is something that each person is individual. Their journey is individual. And you'll see that when you're in the program.
Great. Yeah, very good points. Thank you both. Let's have a question for Kathy, our industry partner. So Kathy, what qualities do you look for in graduates that are coming from a two-year college like Moorpark?
Well, the first thing that I would say is that, are they dedicated to continuing learning? Healthcare is constantly changing, and we are changing our standards to be bachelor's prepared. But I was an ADN and I went back to school. So it's really that dedication to continue to learn and go back and get your bachelor's program. And that's what's really, really nice about Moorpark and the Ventura and Moorpark colleges, is they have a connection to our university and make that transition to the bachelor's degree so much easier than when I went back to school. So, but then another thing, the commitment to the facility. We want to know that we're going to invest time and effort into their career and becoming a new nurse, that we want to know that you know, you're not shopping around for the dollar, that we want that commitment and that longevity. And then of course we want to know that people are dedicated, as Alicia said, that passion for the quality of patient care, to keep the patients safe, to keep them free of disease and free from harm. So really to have that empathy and that quality that you're going to provide the patients, because that's really what it's all about. Anything that we do in the hospital is all about our patients.
Absolutely. For our graduates coming out from Moorpark, how do they do, Kathy? How do they do out there?
We hire probably about half of the Moorpark students. And one of the things that they are just very much prepared. They also spend time doing their clinical rotations with us. So those are the ones that we also want to use and have come and apply and work at our hospital, because they know us and we know them. There are several times when I've had a manager say, I want Mary because Mary precepted on our unit and Mary is great. So we get to know them, and we have a constant flow of our Moorpark partners coming through the hospital in clinical orientation, in preceptorship, which is a period of time where they work dedicated to one nurse for several weeks. But that is what really makes a difference, that they're dedicated to the hospital, and they do well. We are very happy with them too. So the Moorpark group has been definitely our high achievers.
Great to hear. Thank you. Alicia and Gabriel, would you say that you've worked with quite a few Moorpark grads over your careers?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I actually still work with a few of the nursing grads. I have actually seen some of the nursing students that have actually graduated from Moorpark end up in places like a UCLA or other hospitals, including the VA. So I can assure you that Moorpark College does prepare their students very well in the nursing program.
Actually, that's my next question for you. Having been working in the field for a while now, how do you think your experiences specifically at Moorpark helped prepare you for where you are now?
I would say, oh, go ahead.
No, you want to go first? I was going to
Okay.
yield to the
Alicia?
ladies.
Okay.
Okay. You know, definitely the foundation that Moorpark provided was excellent. And there is the general foundation, but then we were fortunate enough each semester to do specialty rotations. So you got a little taste of what it would be like to be a home health nurse or an OR nurse or an ER nurse. It's all very different. And we got to be exposed to those different nursing practices, which was an excellent place to begin the career for sure.
And you know, just to supplement what Alicia mentioned, sometimes the nursing programs are like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to be getting, especially if you end up choosing one of those online programs. However, one of the advantages that I found at Moorpark College was that, you know, the diversity of places where you can do your clinical rotations. I really love actually doing my rotation at Children's LA, even though at the time it was very heart-wrenching and emotional to see children with cystic fibrosis or learning that children were going to be dying. And I would actually be having my own children almost in the similar ages, and I would actually come home crying. However, because I wanted to be able to do more for those children. But having that ability to choose clinical sites or your teachers, one of the other advantages was that, you know, when we used to do the clinical rotation, the hours that you spend in the hospital is a big difference. There are programs where you only do 4-hour clinical rotations, and 4 hours sometimes is not enough to get a glimpse into what happens in the real life of a nurse. If you come in early in the morning, well, you know, it's a crazy part of the morning trying to give the morning meds. If you come around noon, well, they already passed all the medicines, and you know, you're missing part of what happened in the beginning on the report. If you come in towards the end, well, now the patient is coming in from different exams and all the being fed, and they already got shower and everything. So sometimes you miss a couple of segments of life in the real life for the patient. And I think Moorpark used to provide a good amount of clinical hours every day. But the icing on the cake was the preceptorship, having those shifts at the end of the program where the student nurse is able to start gradually, 1 patient at a time, 2 patients at a time, then 3 patients, and eventually taking the full load. It makes a big difference. You know, it's like when you're learning to ride a bicycle, but you have your training wheels as a backup support. Well, it's very similar. You know, it's nice to have another nurse, a professional nurse, helping you become the best nurse that you can. And I think Moorpark College set the best foundation I could actually experience myself.
Gabriel, I wondered, is it that you are being able to put it all together? You take all of the clinical experiences and you're able to put it all together.
Yep, and we're very fortunate at Moorpark that our industry partners allow us to do preceptorship placements at all of our community hospitals. It's not, preceptorship isn't included in every nursing program, but Moorpark is very fortunate to be able to provide that. Let's see, so Kathy, what do you think you would let students know about, they're thinking about going into nursing? So we have students who are thinking about going into nursing. What would you want to tell them?
I would want to, I want to really make sure that they're being realistic with their capabilities and their health, especially now with COVID, and having those responsibilities to know that there are certain things that we have to do every day with our protective equipment. And there are some challenges that I have seen more and more in some students to how are they going to overcome some of these barriers. So then that leads to another thing that I would say, that to be positive. So if you find that you're faced with some of those barriers, if there's a health issue that we have to kind of work around, that to look for the solution. because there is always a solution that if you are positive and looking for that solution, you are more likely to be successful, because that honestly, that's what we do as nurses every day, try to help the patient and solve some of the problems that we are faced, and we don't get to always choose what they are. But I would also say, follow your dreams. Don't let the barriers or COVID, follow your dreams. I wanted to be a nurse since I was in 6th grade. And you come across barriers. I mean, I think about Alicia and Gabriel and changing careers, but you really have to be focused and committed and say, I'm going to do this because this is really what I want to be. That's what I would do.
So great. You speak of COVID. So for Alicia and Gabriel, are there big changes you've seen in the industry? Try to think outside of COVID, and then we kind of can't help but think about changes COVID has brought about. But what kind of big changes have you seen so far in your careers?
Well, I can say personally that back when I graduated, this is kind of a funny thing, but they were literally giving away $10,000 sign-on bonuses for anybody that would come work. And then the career and the industry changed. And those sign-on bonuses kind of went away. And then for a little bit of time, nurses were having to think outside of the box. You know, I want to be an L&D nurse, but instead I'm going to try to be a home health nurse. And so everybody had to kind of variable. And now we're back to this pre-COVID, but now we've kind of come back to, they were doing sign-on bonuses and so forth. I know Los Robles was giving some sign-on bonuses also. So if you talk to people that have worked for 50 years, there's a lot of changes. We talk about how the old school nurses used to sharpen their needles to put IVs in. They used to sterilize them. The containers they used to use for chest tubes. All of that equipment and modern medicine has changed. When I first started in telemetry, we literally did open heart surgeries, many of them every day. And so you were doing you learned how to take care of that special patient. And now they've changed that, and now they just maybe will go in through the radial artery, or if they have to, they'll go through the femoral artery. So I mean, the modern medicine is miraculous, and it changes, and so you kind of have to adapt and change with that. In regards to COVID, I think that nationally with the pandemic, we really assumed that we would get a flood of patients and that our hospitals would be overrun. And what I saw a trend in all 3 hospitals right here locally that I was in touch with and working with, they actually saw a drop in their volume, and the hospital corporations had to make decisions on how are we going to do this best for the hospital and for the patients. And so they had to cohort types of patients that normally would be a 4 patient to 1 nurse with a 5 patient to 1 nurse. So they all had to make adjustments and changes to accommodate this particular situation with COVID. And I think that that's the good thing about nursing, is there is always a need. And no matter what, if you look on Indeed right now, hundreds of posts for places looking for nurses, and that has not changed.
What are some changes you may have seen, Gabriel?
Well, for me, actually, COVID, it's interesting because when I graduated in 2009, we were actually facing the H1N1, the swine flu pandemic. And I remember I even got to volunteer back in the time when they were doing the drive-through vaccination. And we used to have, I remember even the sheriffs, one point they were actually having massive vaccination camps in football fields, soccer fields, and people were actually going with no questions asked, and they were just giving shots, and vaccines. And I imagine we're probably almost on the brink of maybe something very similar once we have a vaccine for COVID. However, what I have seen personally, there's things that I actually never thought I would get to see, like the lack of PPE. There's the every day, for example, in our local hospitals, we get to wear a simple face mask. And before, we were taught in nursing school that it was one simple mask per patient per visit. You saw the patient, you wash your hands, you dispose of the mask, and then you carried on. If you were gonna see another patient, you put a brand new mask, you wash your hands, and then you went inside the room. Well, now actually we get to wear the simple mask all day. It's awful. The second thing, sometimes actually the respirators, N95 respirators, they're the more heavy duty mask. It protects against 95% of the particles. There's a big shortage. Sometimes not all the departments are able to afford those respirators because what they used to cost $1 before per respirator, now many companies are doing a markup, and sometimes they go for $5 or even more. So hospitals have to spend more money, sometimes on PPE, so they try to ration how long people can actually use the PPE. I have actually seen chaplains wear the same respirator for about a month because their departments are very limited on what they can actually afford on personal protective equipment.
We're getting back to the, I was going to say, we're getting back to where we are now considering reusing, refurbishing those masks and then using them again for the same nurse, but kind of going back to what Alicia said about when sharpening needles and reusing them.
And I remember those times when we used to resharpen the needles because my mom used to be one of those persons that used to resharpen her needles. And then she not only used to resharpen them, she used to boil them completely before and after the use. So I remember those times when the syringe was made out of glass and the syringe is made out of stainless steel. There were many people that didn't sharpen them. When you were actually the patient, it was a painful experience. So, you know, yes, COVID has brought up interesting things. Like Alicia mentioned, you know, it hasn't panned out as probably the numbers that we were expecting locally in Ventura County. I think we're lucky. There were many times that I was actually afraid of seeing the numbers in the LA County, and since they're our neighbors, that eventually those numbers will start increasing here locally. But regardless, I have actually seen that, yes, it has been affecting more the minorities, especially since I work in Oxnard and Camarillo. But I have also seen people died of COVID of all the ages. I have had people in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s, 60s, 70s. I actually do have even a patient that was actually over 90, and she actually was able to survive it. So sometimes age, yes, it plays a big factor, but the biggest factor, I think, is the comorbidities. So, and even the treatments, everything is experimental, so.
Gabriel, how do you handle that? We had a question come up in the Q&A. How do you handle something like this with COVID, or you work in palliative care? You mind touching on that a little bit?
Yes, you know, with COVID, interesting because I'll try not to divulge too much information.
Of course, yes.
Unfortunately, some of the cases that I have seen, people think that the ventilators, when they put the plastic tube down the mouth and they put people on artificial life and the machine breathes for you, people think that the ventilators are gonna be saving people's lives. My experience has been kind of mixed, neutral, because I do see people that actually get put on the ventilator. That doesn't necessarily mean that the patient is gonna be able to overcome COVID and come out of it completely well. I have actually seen people with COVID that they were on the ventilator for weeks and weeks and weeks, and all of a sudden they end up with a tracheostomy with the plastic tube in their throat, on the ventilator with a feeding tube in the belly, and now that's how they're gonna be probably for at least several months. But you know, since it's so new, it's hard to deal with it. The problem lies, for me particularly, that I get attached to those families, to those patients, because I get to hear their stories. Me as a palliative care nurse, many times they confuse us with hospice. We don't do hospice. Yes, we could do hospice outside of the hospital, but in the hospital, we're an extra layer of support for patients and families, especially when there's no visitors right now in the hospitals, except when they're gonna have a new baby, or at the end of life. However, there are some days that, you know, when you get to hear the stories through either FaceTime or Zoom or other applications, WebEx, when you're trying to connect the families to see at least the loved ones on the ventilator and talk to them and be able to express their love, like, I love you, please forgive me, I forgive you, giving them peace. It's hard because there's days that, you know, you're rooting, just like with the family, please get stronger, you can do it. And then you see them all of a sudden start going downhill. And it's sad when you lose those patients and when they died on you, you know, because you get attached to them almost like if they were another distant relative. And you get to hear the stories, and then you say like, oh, you know what? They didn't even get a chance to see grow up their child. And it's hard emotionally. Sometimes you have to find also peers to be able to relieve a little bit of that stress and talk to other people.
Kathy,
And Gabriel,
go ahead.
I was going to say, Gabriel, that's part of the palliative care that gives that support to the patient and the family in dealing with the diseases that they were faced with. I'm sorry, John, I interrupted you.
No,
You had a
that's
question
fine.
for
I was
me?
just going to I was going to go off what Gabe was talking about, and then comment on you made a comment about looking for empathy in a nurse. And I imagine at this time, you know, that's a very fine line. You want somebody who's very empathetic, and yet they're being placed into difficult circumstances.
As Gabriel had said, we are all faced with those challenges that we get attached, and we want to create that support. That's what gives us our reward, is that we've helped either the patient or the family and the loved ones, and like Gabriel was saying, found that ability to put the phone or if they're standing outside the window, to be able to be there. If they can't be there at all, and knowing I was the one or the nurse was the one that was able to hold their hand. And I've heard some of those stories on the news, that it's such pride that they remember that nurse that was always there holding their hand or telling them to cheer on and giving them that strength, because that's really, you know, what we are. If we can't give them the strength to help them survive, we give that strength and that comfort and that empathy to give them those precious last moments.
And you know, one of the things that sometimes we take for granted is that we assume everybody speaks English. You probably have heard that I actually have a sexy accent, but actually, you know, my first language is Spanish. And one of the, you know, the most recent memories, one of the family members got so excited when I was able to talk to them in Spanish and explain to them everything that is going on. You know, they've been using an interpreter through Siracom, but it's very impersonal. And sometimes those interpreters, you know, they interpret word by word, but sometimes the message is lost in translation. And for the family to be able to hear everything in a language that they completely understood 100% sometimes makes a big difference. And I think this is where we as nurses have to also take into account that, you know, sometimes taking that little extra step of finding someone that speaks the language fluently as an interpreter makes a big difference. But also, even when you don't know what to say, sometimes just listening makes a big difference. You know, when you don't know what to say, it's okay just to sit and listen.
And that's where the empathy comes in, definitely.
Yep.
We have another question from the audience. They're asking if you could discuss the tease exam.
Oh, okay. I don't think Alicia and Gabriel had to take that, but the tease exam is it's an acronym for the Test of Essential Academic Skills, and it's a test on English, reading, basic general science, and math up to the algebra level. And it's a exam that the state of California allows colleges to administer to see where you are academically before coming into the nursing program. So for Moorpark, at least, you take your prerequisites, which are the classes that are required before applying to the program, such as English, intermediate algebra, anatomy, physiology, microbiology. And then if your application is complete, you're invited to take the tease, or you have the tease scores submitted from elsewhere by a certain date. And then we look at those scores, and the state of California has a desired score. So for the state of California, if you're below 62%, and think of it as a percentile. It's not that you got only 62% correct. It's not quite like that. It's a 62% adjusted score. If you're below that, then the school needs to assign you what's called remediation. And the remediation is based on how you did on the test. So you may need to take another college class. You may need to do some math worksheets. We may ask you to do certain things and turn in that evidence before we are able to allow you into the nursing program if you are selected to come in. Completing the remediation doesn't necessarily mean you're assured of a seat. Passing the tease does not assure you of a seat. Not passing the tease does not negate you from a seat. So it's a picture of your academic skills, and there's a plan or a support that comes with it in case you don't achieve the score that the state would like you to have.
You know, just to supplement to what Christina was saying, I actually did get to take the tease. I think I was probably one of the first classes.
Oh, yes, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Yes, in 2009. I think I was also one of the first nurses that in the time that we were required to do fingerprints on the live scan. Now all the nurses are required to take the live scan and go through the background check. But the tease test, yes, you know, like you said, is very important. Sometimes, especially for those new nurses coming on board, you know, many of you may be actually focused on getting an A, being a straight A students. In nursing, that really doesn't matter. You know, at the end of the day, your batch is going to have a RN, registered nurse. It doesn't have a RNA, RNB, or RNC. And I know personally many nurses that actually graduated maybe with a C or a B, and they're just as awesome as those nurses that actually got an A. So don't focus just solely on the grade, actually focus on your passion, you know, helping other people.
The dedication is really important.
Well, Kathy, you also talked about, you know, being a lifelong learner, learning ongoing. And then Alicia, you mentioned new technologies or equipment that came in. How does that process work when there is a new innovation? How do you integrate that into your daily workflow?
Well, we're being faced with, there's a lot of dialysis types of activities going on right now. And changes like Alicia mentioned about the cardiac, all of the cardiac interventions. So a lot of times it depends on the service line of the hospital. It depends on the passion for the physician. And I'll use our stroke program as one of those changes that have happened, just leaps and bounds have happened in the last several years. The technology and developing the interventional radiology. So as a nurse, most of those things used to be in the operating room, and the cath lab probably had some technology, but the interventional radiology that they work with the physician, our stroke physician, and they can go in, and I remember so distinctly, a 56-year-old woman had a full stroke where the full loss of one side of her functioning, went in with a little device that they went in through the veins and went into the brain and removed that clot. And then after the procedure, she had full recovery. So, I mean, those kinds of technology are changing so frequently, but that is something that they bring and say, that is such a success story that we can make that kind of dramatic change in somebody's life, especially at a young age. So we have industry companies that produce the technology. They come and they help us learn. They help the physician learn. And it's kind of a multifaceted, because the facility needs to decide, are we going to do this? We have a passionate physician who's going to do it. He's incorporated one of the nursing managers and our interventional radiology and said, we can do this. And then you develop a trial, and we teach the nurses and do a trial and identify, can we meet that that service line. So it's very amazing to me. Right now we're changing the type of dialysis dramatically that what we did 10 years ago. So there's just so much technology that we change. So it's a group effort. It really is a group effort, because we don't know the technology. So we rely on the company to come and help teach us. And then we have a certain select group of people. Alicia was talking about the open hearts. We hardly do any open hearts anymore. but we have certain number of nurses who can do those open hearts that so we don't, not every nurse can be a specialist in some of these areas. Very interesting.
And
Yeah.
you know, now that you mention it, Kathy, it brings me back to memories that, you know, nurses have to be able to adapt to changing times. I never thought I was going to be using Zoom or FaceTime or WebEx to communicate with patients and families. And, you know, is the reality when I graduated in 2009, we were still doing actually paper charting. Nowadays, we do everything with the computer and we're trying to save a paper. So sometimes you just have to be ready to actually adapt with the technology. Just like Alicia mentioned earlier, sometimes the doctor is able to go through the radial artery and be able to actually sometimes even use devices called like the Da Vinci, that is a robot, and he's actually in a different room doing the surgery. And the incision is so much smaller that the patient is able to heal faster. So
Yeah, and the nursing care is different. And there's in-house training for
talk,
all of that also.
yeah,
So
and talking about those patients who had a fractured hip, now
Yes.
they go home after the next day. That is a huge difference in the technology.
I used to take care of them for
Alicia,
a week.
you were going to say something.
Oh,
Yes.
I was just going to add to what you're saying. You know, a lot of times the young doctors, I'm going to say young because they are new on the latest technology. They get invited to be part of the board of the medicine and bring what their specialty is into the hospital, and they bring their equipment. The distributors of the equipment bring in their education team. We as nurses are required to have 30 CEUs, which is continuing education credits, every 2 years. And hopefully that each nurse takes ownership of that and utilizes it to better their practice. And sometimes the physicians will put on dinners where you actually get to go and enjoy a beautiful dinner at Mastro's or something like that. And they teach you about how to care for their patients. So there's always ongoing learning. And as Kathy's in charge, I think, of education at both those big hospitals, you know, they're responsible for making sure that we have, we're safe and we have safe practice, and that we've had our education and we get signed off on it. And we go and we learn through experience, and we always, always, always lean on somebody that has more experience than us, because there will always be somebody more experienced. And thank God for that.
I think our challenge as educators is how do we make sure that those people that are taking that information, taking that learning, and change the practice on the unit? How do you apply those things that you're learning? And from an education standpoint, when we talk about technology, we have to be really careful. With COVID, all of our orientation, almost all, and 80% of our orientation is now online, where we used to do it all in person. But for the nurses and those people that are getting that education, we have to be careful to find that good balance. We've been doing Zoom for some of our ongoing training, and we have a program that's called Clinical Excellence. So we ask the staff, what do you want to learn? So that's more of an in-person. But we have HealthStream, which is a learning management system, where a lot of information is electronics, and then we sign it off, and that way that we have documentation of it. But it's a delicate balance. You know, people don't want to be inundated with all the technology because we live with it every day, taking care of patients. So we want to see that person and have that personal experience with our coworkers or our instructors, just as we do learning how to, you know, taking care of the patients and making sure those patients are well taken care of.
And you know, just to add to Alicia and Kathy have actually mentioned, especially about the number of CEUs that you have to do on the continuing education once you become a nurse. Many of you might actually be thinking of going into nursing because you say, oh, you know what, once I get my associate degree and that's it, I don't need to continue studying. You know what, you're for awakening call. Many of the nurses actually nowadays, this is the first step in your career. This will be the first one out of many. Many of them would actually continue with through a university and get their bachelor's, their BSN. Many of them would actually go for their MSN or the nurse practitioner. Many of them would also go for their DNP. So the doctor nurse practice, yes. So you know what? If you're coming into nursing because you think you only need to get an associate degree and just the RN, no. Unless you actually like to have just one steady practice and be at the bedside forever and ever. But the reality is that every so many years, you know, nursing is one of the beautiful programs where you actually get to change careers once you no longer have the passion, the same passion that inspired you at the beginning. And when you feel that, you know, one day you call in sick and you say, I don't want to go to work, that's normal. But when you call in twice or 3 times in a week, you're either being caustic to yourself, or you're actually being caustic to the environment, or the environment is being caustic to you, and you need to move on. Realize that, and you need to change. And nursing allows you that, open some doors for you that say, you know what, I no longer want to be doing palliative care. Maybe now I want to do oncology. Maybe now I want to go to the ICU. Maybe I want to go to the ER. You know, look at the beautiful wealth of knowledge that Alicia has actually accrued throughout the years. And every so many years, we actually tend to move to a different passion, because bottom line, you need to feel passionate about what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is that along that line, we also get faced with opportunities. So I would have never thought about being an employee health nurse, but it just was an opportunity that showed itself to me, and I took the leap. I wanted to have that different experience that I needed. And to add a little bit more to that too, there are so many different certifications too that add to that breadth of my med surg certification or my orthopedic certification, so that I am considered more of an expert. I have more training, and I've taken a test that says I have a higher capability to take care of those patients that I have passion to take care of right now. And I don't know, Gabe, did they have a certification in palliative care?
They do. There's the CHPN, the Certified Palliative and
So there is
Hospice
so
Nurse.
many. There are so many different ways that we enrich our career, whether it's through the academic level or through the certification level. There's some hospitals that have career ladders, so that as I'm a med surg nurse, and I can learn things about what it's going to take for me to be either palliative care or surgical or OR, ER, so that there's an ability for me to move even in the same hospital, so that we have that that mobility and that passion to kind of, I'm going to take all these classes to be able to enrich myself and be able to be be considered for another opportunity. We have a program at Los Robles and through HCA that is called the STAR RN. So even though we are educating graduate nurses to be nurses, we also, there's a program that's called a PLUS program. So we take an experienced nurse and we give them critical care experience, or we'll give them OR experience and give them emergency room experience, so that it's a very condensed program, but we give them those opportunities to, because it's kind of one of those, you know, catch-alls that if you don't have experience, you can't have the job, but how you get an experience if you can't get the job? Mm-hmm. So we've created a way to move past that. So there are so many opportunities in nursing.
Mm-hmm. I will.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I will echo that. You know, it's fortunate. Kathy and Gabriel and I have worked at several hospitals in the community, and we have come across each other in different avenues of our work. And I would say with my career personally, there were things, like Kathy said, that I never would have dreamed that I would have ended up doing. And, you know, it's a journey. And, you know, sometimes you are asked to do something that you didn't think you would be good at and didn't think you were going to try. And if you, with time, you decide to try, and it is part of your bank of knowledge and part of your experiences, part of your resume building. That's the good thing about nursing, is it's evolving always. Mm-hmm.
We have another question from our guest, and I suspect this is a student. asking Gabe and Alicia to talk about the difference between the first and the second year of the program as a Moorpark College student.
Gabe, you did the accelerated program. I don't know if you went through the whole, I would say, you know, the first year was an adjustment because you have to figure out how to study. You have to learn how to study for those specific exams and learn how to manage all the balls in the air, trying to figure out how to get to class and how to get your study groups together. And once you establish those things that first semester, for example, those carry on. I mean, I think I had a best friend in nursing school that I relied on that person for all of my studying, you know, and it's collaborative. That first year, that first semester especially, you're leaning on each other to develop your interactions, your community, and that carries on through the first, the second, the third, and the fourth year. But I have to say that once you get to the fourth semester, it's finally, you can, like, it's all downhill and you're going to get there. You're running the last bit of the marathon and it's a celebration, and you all know it because it's really an accomplishment for sure.
And everything starts to click together.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. It starts to click. It's like, oh, I get this now.
For sure.
Oh, Gabriel, you're on mute still. Hey, Gabriel, you're on mute. There we go.
One of the things to keep in mind is that even if you divide it in the first year or second year, in reality, you're going to find out it's actually first semester, second semester, third semester, and the fourth semester. The reality is on the first semester, like Alicia mentioned, you're going to have to learn new studying techniques. And that's why it's important that you choose the good study habits and good study buddies as well. And you're going to be given, for example, a question like, what color is the American flag? And then you get an answer is red, blue, white. And you go, well, all of them are actually right. Well, you're right, but one of them is actually most right. And that's the one that you have to choose. So
that's not actually a question, but that's,
no, that's not a question, but they're very similar. But the reality is that, you know, in every single semester, you're always going to say, oh, you know what, this semester is more difficult than the previous one. And it's okay because you're learning more and more stuff. You're learning more diseases, you're learning more signs and symptoms. But if you rely on memorization, this is not going to work for you. You have to understand why the process works this way. Like Dalila, one of the professors used to say to me, just remember where the water goes, the sodium goes. Or was it vice versa? But regardless, in the disease process, you have to understand how it actually happens to be able to actually move ahead. And yes, even though the third semester might seem harder than the second semester, and the second is harder than the first semester, you know what? If you have made it this far and you have worked so hard, I think you can probably do it. You know, if I was able to make it, you know, with the second language, I'm sure many of you can actually make it as well. You know, the beauty about it is that you will also be exposed to so many different particular trainings and clinicals, including mental health, including child and labor, including labor and delivery, ICU, ER, OR. And interesting enough, every time you do a rotation, you go, oh, I love to work actually in med-surg. Then the next clinical rotation comes in and you say, oh, I love working in the ICU. When I graduate, I want to work in the ICU. And then the next clinical rotation comes along, and you know what? It's okay. You know,
well, I have to add a little bit to that, Gabe, because I did my OR rotation and I said, I do not want to work in the OR. I can't talk to my patients, and that was my, you know, part of my passion to be able to talk to my patients. So you will find those places where you have to get through the semester, but that's not your favorite place either.
The students usually say, it never got easier. I just kind of got used to it, and I kept plugging along. It's like, okay, yeah. So do you stay in touch, Gabe and Alicia? You said you've come across all three of each other in the county. Do you stay in touch with your fellow alumni, or do you see? You probably work with a lot of them.
You know, I would say that it's a very small community. And being a nurse, it's a very small community. You will run into people over and over again. Somebody that you went to school with, you'll cross paths with, and it feels so good because that time that you're in nursing school is a bonding experience that I can't explain. But you make connections with people that are lifelong. I had put together, because I felt that bond with people, the 10-year reunion, which was a good experience to see where people's careers had taken them. You know, if I don't speak with them often or frequently, I know how to get a hold of them. You know, that's how small the community is.
And, you know, just to echo on what Alicia mentioned, you know, we actually tried to do the 10-year graduation ceremony reunion. Initially, yes, I was part of the accelerated program, which was only 12 students. But during the 2 semesters, we were actually merged with the regular semester, and it was about 53 of us. When we tried to get together, because remember, all nurses, they live in a way that is actually very kind of a hectic, busy styles, and you work 3 days on, and sometimes you get 3 or 4 days off. And some people don't like to work the 3 days on. Sometimes they like to work like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Other ones Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Or some people love to work on the weekends because that way they get the rest of the week to do whatever they want. So it's hard to actually get that many people to agree on one schedule. So for us, we were only able to get 4 of us together. But regardless, I still get in touch with many of them. Part of the alumni, you know, this is actually just the beginning of a new start for the alumni in Moorpark College. I'm also an alumna for Channel Islands and also help students there in the nursing program as well.
Well, I hate to say this, but we're coming up on the hour now. One thing I want to share, though, from the question and answer input, they're talking about you all have such great passion. When Kathy was talking about being positive, clearly you have all found a way to stay positive and to and share your enthusiasm and still your commitment and dedication to the industry and what you do. I can only imagine what our students are seeing, watching you, and feeling encouraged about their choice to pursue nursing. So thank you all for that. And thank you for being here tonight for this discussion. It was very engaging. And again, the hour flew by. I can't believe we're already at an hour. Thank you very much. And to our guests, thank you for being here. And thank you for coming to our first Moorpark College Foundation Job Ready Alumni Forum. And if you'd like any more information about our panelists, if you'd like information about our next forum, or our new campaign to help fund our basic needs center on campus, you can find us on the Moorpark College website, moorparkcollege.edu/foundation. Thank you again for everybody. And Christina, thank you for putting this group together. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, John and Christina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you,
having
everyone.
us.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.